Thank you very much, Speaker. I'm happy to rise today and speak in support of Bill 282, moving Ontarians More Safely Act, or MOMS Act, an acronym that we're already familiar with. The Ontario government is taking strong action to combat aggressive and unsafe driving in order to protect our young and our vulnerable drivers. I also want to take a few moments just to, again, thank Minister Mulroney and PA Thanagassalan for all their hard work in bringing these changes forward. They were very much needed. I also want to take time to thank all the hardworking staff at the MTO and all of my colleagues who have taken time to speak in support of this important act. The MOMS Act, what a fitting name for protecting the safety of Ontarians and strengthening our roads. But not to be outdone, Speaker, we could also call it the DADS Act. Oh yes, Defending and Driving Safely Act. Now you have to understand my sense of humor, when I relate to that as well. There's so many different fitting names to protect the vulnerable citizens of the road, from drivers who engage in stunt driving and street racing, all the way to aggressive drivers and implementing towing regulations, which can make, in fact, any situation stressful and unnecessarily dangerous. Those who decide to be unsafe and threaten the safety and lives of others should not be driving on our roads. And this government will be reinforcing these rules the best way we know how, by increased suspensions and other more severe penalties. It's hard to comprehend, Speaker, just, what the government's decision would be without looking at first some statistics. Today I want to start off by sharing some of those statistics so we all have a better understanding of our roads and drivers throughout Ontario. And I want to start off by sharing a statistic from the Traffic Injury Research Foundation's Road Safety Monitor 2019, Drinking and Driving in Canada. In 2019, 15% of drivers admitted to driving after consuming any amount of alcohol. And that drivers between the ages of 25 to 34 are most likely the ones who have been drinking. And according to the Government of Canada's Department of Justice website, in 2017, over 69,000 impaired driving incidents were reported, and almost 3,500 drug-impaired incidents were also reported. Of course, that reminds me of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And now they have ads out there, pertaining to just driving impaired, which could be also drug-induced as well. Now, look, I know that these particular acts aren't related to driving under the influence, the ones I just mentioned. But there is a reason why I decided to share those statistics with you, so that what I'd like to do is to demonstrate that, you never really know who you're driving beside. People who are impaired are more likely to make poor judgment calls, exceed the speed limit, not to mention their slower reaction times. And again, I understand these acts aren't related to driving under the influence, but I just want everyone to understand that there are many situations a driver should be conscious of. If you or someone you know is driving over the speed limit, it becomes a lot harder to make quick driving decisions that could save your life, especially if people around you are also not following the laws and rules of the road. The better prepared you are in being a safe driver, the easier it is to avoid those unthinkable situations. When I was young, and that may be a few moons ago, well, I'm still young at heart. I enrolled in a driver training program. My dad got me enrolled in that, and I was learning how to drive. There was a phrase that my teachers and my family would always say to me: defensive driving. Defensive driving is protecting yourself from other drivers. It's kind of like that Heinz ketchup commercial, anticipation. Now that's long ago, but Speaker, you and I would remember that. Driving defensively, you have to understand that if everyone else around you may not be as attentive, and they may be about to make a mistake that could lead to a crash. Now, that's a very pessimistic way of looking at driving, but I got to tell you, Speaker, that saved me from countless situations throughout my years on the road. Anticipation. Look ahead, see something further. I remember, if let's say, for example, we're driving north on a road, and to your right, you see a vehicle traveling west. And if it appears that you and that vehicle are going to arrive at that situation at about the same time, anticipate that car might run a stop sign. Be prepared. But even so, Speaker, if you're in control of your own vehicle, obeying the rules of the road, sometimes no matter how defensive your driving is, it may not save you from a crash when others are driving too quickly. A large part of the MOMS Act helps Ontario protect themselves from street racing, stunt driving, and other means of aggressive and unsafe driving behaviors. When high speeds or aggressive behaviors are involved, it makes it extremely difficult for everyone involved to make safe, calculated decisions to ensure the safety of all parties. Now, I haven't even begun to mention just how much weather affects the safety of people's driving. Increased speeds or bad weather, from snow and ice to plain rain water, can be a reason for someone losing control and crashes into their vehicle. Speaker, there's a song out there. It was the 3rd of September, a day I'll always remember. That was the day. Now, the song says my daddy died, but I say that was the day I almost died. You remember that accident on 401 Manning Road, the fog-related incident? I was in that crash. I estimate I was probably in about the first 15% of that crash. When the fog lifted, after I managed to pull a lady out of the median, the grass median, got her to safety, and we used my car as a shield because it was like a war zone. You could hear bang, bang, cars ahead of me traveling eastbound. I was traveling westbound, and cars behind me. It was horrible. It was a war zone, for sure. But when it was all said and done, I have to tell you, Speaker, I went over and I talked to the police officer, and he said, make sure you get the name of everybody who car you hit and who hit your car. And I said, well, may I leave now? He said, did you get the names? I said, sir, my car wasn't hit. He looked at me. There was carnage all around me. And there was my Chrysler LHS parked on an angle, part on the shoulder, part in the outside lane, not a scratch on it. I was protected that day. Weather, you just never know. But you know what, Speaker? There is no room in Ontario's roads for unsafe driving. And according to the Highway Traffic Act of Ontario, stunt driving tickets are handed out to cars caught speeding 50 kilometers per hour over the speed limits. 50. Well, just last week, CBC News released a news article stating that during the COVID-19 pandemic, so within the last year, speeding and stunt driving has significantly increased, putting other drivers at risk. I'm not sure if you remember, but on May 19th of last year, an 18-year-old teenager was caught doing 308 kilometers per hour on the QEW. 308 kilometers per hour? For perspective, if the speed limit was 100 kilometers, or even 110, as it is on the QEW, that's almost 200 kilometers per hour faster than what they should have been driving. Formula One race cars have a top speed of about 360 kilometers an hour. Could you imagine, just for a moment, here's you and I, maybe you're in your van or I'm in my Murano, and we're driving down the QEW, and all of a sudden some vehicle just passes us. Would that scare the daylights out of you? It would scare the daylights out of me. And Speaker, although I've never experienced someone driving that fast going by me, I will tell you I have had that experience, and I'm sure many of us in this legislature have had that experience. And yes, your heart jumps up into your throat. You go, where did that person come from? Especially if you were thinking about changing lanes and all of a sudden they come right up behind you, just screaming by you. Wow, I'll tell you, that is something else. Well, within the first 10 months of 2020, 224 people lost their lives and 209 fatal accidents. And as mentioned before, driving at increased speeds makes it a lot more challenging to make safe, defensive driving decisions that could save you or other drivers' lives during the process. Now, I've talked a lot about protecting drivers, but I have failed to mention the cost of all these situations have on other surrounding citizens, from cyclists to construction workers to plain pedestrians. All these vulnerable citizens can be significantly impacted by higher driving speeds. The thrill of racing or going fast, is it worth it to that biker that just was killed? Is it worth it to that pedestrian crossing the street that has a life, a partner, and 3 kids, or to the whole family? Or how about that construction worker trying to make a living or doing their job? The answer is no.
Order, please.
That is why the Ontario
Opposition members,
is strengthening the rules around these offences, making the penalties considerably higher. To show Ontarians we're not messing around with road safety. You know, we've talked a lot about stats and why the road safety is high priority, but what is in this act and how will it affect day-to-day drivers who are caught aggressively driving? What other components will this act do? Well, you know what? Speaker, you will remember a fellow by the name of Bill Dana, known as Jose Jimenez. And Jose Jimenez did a National Safety Council back in the day when they were first introducing seatbelts. And he's sitting on a stool. And he's talking about the importance of putting on a seatbelt, and so back when seatbelts were first introduced. Then he goes to stand up, and he realizes that there's a seatbelt around him holding him to that higher chair. And I had to laugh. These things stick in my mind. It's all about safety, though. It's all about safety. Well, you know, first of all, you know, we're looking to amend some of the more severe road penalties through Schedule 1, the Highway Traffic Act. We're wanting to make mandatory license suspension for convicting racing and stunt driving charges, changing the duration of the administrative impoundment process for the vehicle from 7 to 14 days, and change the license suspension for a time frame from 7 to 30 days. You know, furthermore, we were wanting to add a clause providing suspension penalties to anyone caught racing in a community safe zone. You know, these changes are there to escalate suspensions for repeat offenders, and setting lower speed thresholds for stunt driver charges on municipal roads is our goal. Another huge problem that has stemmed from our advancement in technology comes from, yes, you guessed it, I know you know what it is, it's distracted driving. You know, from talking and texting on your cell phone to eating while driving, that means distracted driving, and driving up statistics never seen before in human history relating to motor vehicle accidents. Proper preventative measures start at education. And next month, our government is planning on launching a social media campaign to educate the public more on the dangers of distracted driving and the lives that it could cost. Very briefly, I want to just talk about the Metrolinx Act 2006. That's Schedule 2, by the way, in the Act. And the second change to this legislation is pointed out there, and this is where our government is just looking to amend the definition of GO Transit in a way that the term includes the Greater Toronto Transit Authority. but honestly, Speaker, I mean, I live in rural Ontario. Our definition of GO Transit is when the local bus goes sauntering by and stops at a bus stop, you get on the bus and you go. That's our definition of GO Transit. But lastly, I also want to mention what our government is wanting to do to improve the laws surrounding towing and storage safety for drivers across Ontario, with changes to Schedule 3. By introducing the Towing and Storage Safety and Enforcement Act 2021. These changes include to certificate holders who are now going to be subjected to the requirements and standards with respect of towing and vehicle storage as outlined in the Act. This Act also provides for the designation of highways or parts of highways as restricted towing zones that are only authorized to certificate holders that can provide the appropriate towing services. And yes, even administrative penalties may be imposed in the event of non-compliance. Now, these changes will set the standard of roadside behavior and ensure all towing-related company operators are certified under the Act. And again, you know, we're wanting to keep Ontario roads the safest in North America by targeting the offenders that make them dangerous. All in all, while continuing to increase the standards for consumers and businesses, while again, protecting vulnerable citizens. Now, Speaker, I just want to take a moment here to talk about how stunt driving and distracted drivers have affected me. I mentioned earlier how sometimes they'll come right up out of nowhere and just zoom by you, and that I have a serious concern because, as you know, being down in the your great riding of Windsor-Tecumseh and my greater riding of Chatham-Kent-Leamington, we travel that 401. We travel that 401 a lot, and maybe sometimes by train, but sometimes we drive. And you know what? Again, that stretch of 401, very flat, especially down in our area, but it's also very dangerous as well. Most notably, 401 is perhaps one of the most dangerous highways in North America. So much so they made a Discovery Channel show about 401 and the incidents related to it. So you know that there have definitely been some major incidents. And since, well, for about 5 years now, I've been a strong advocate for Build a Barrier, as you're very aware. And when you travel that section, we're starting to do a lot of work on 401 from Tilbury into Chatham, which is not a large stretch of road right now, but you have to start somewhere. And eventually, because when you look from Tilbury and going west, you have that concrete divider. And usually just from London or Lambeth going east, you have that concrete divider as well. But in between, you have green grass and makes it very dangerous, and there have been crossover accidents and head-on collisions as a result of that. But also, my staffer once told me of street racing incidents that he saw in the aftermath one morning. He said, well, he was on his way to school and he passed a large section of an intersection blocked off. There were car pieces scattered everywhere, even in adjacent parking lots. There were articles of clothing around the scene as well, including a single running shoe on the grass. And upon further investigation, he found out that the crash was from a street racing incident that occurred significantly earlier that morning. The car was going so fast it didn't navigate the turn as it should have. The driver lost control, the car jumped the curve, and investigators quoted that the car was going so fast it literally disintegrated upon the crash. Nobody wants to see things like that, Speaker. We don't want that to happen. But again, street racing, stunt driving, there's a reason why we're putting laws and trying to enforce these rules, in this particular bill. And it's a wonderful bill. It truly is. It's for the safety of everyone driving on the road and for the safety of everyone surrounding them. I talked earlier about advocating for Build a Barrier, and of course, even down in the Essex area, Highway 3. That has been a death trap for a lot of people. There's a lot of reasons why. Can you blame it just on the highway? Probably not. It could be inattentive driving, it could be people getting impatient because they're behind slower vehicles. They pull out the pass, but unfortunately they don't see another car coming their way, and that's when trouble can happen. But you know what? Installing concrete barriers will stop it, preventing crossovers. And just a quick story, my daughter was trying out for Canadian Idol this is going back several years now. And she got up on, she's a relatively new driver, and she was on 401 near the Young exit. And a van came across, she's in the outside lane, and the van came across, cut her off. She was traveling at the same speed as everybody else, and she panicked, and she oversteered, and she hit that concrete barrier. If it wasn't there, she would have gone headlong into traffic going the other way. She bounced off that concrete, came back in, a lot of traffic, was hit 3 times, and when the car came to a stop, it was on its roof and over in the other side. She walked out of that crash with a scratch on her ear. You know, she was...
Thank you.
That's it? Okay. Thank you.
It's like a Canadian Idol. Once you're done, you're done. You know, that's it. We have time for questions and comments. The first question. We'll flip a coin. The member for Ottawa Centre.
Just nice to hear from my friend from Chatham-Kent. I was wondering if you could finish your thought about how important it is for us to protect road safety in the kinds of traumatic incidents like you're recounting at your daughter. Finish your thought there, my friend.
To the
member from Chatham-Kent Leamington to finish his thought.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank the member from Ottawa Centre for the question as well, and giving me an opportunity to just finish my thoughts. You know, again, friends, what I want to suggest here to everyone here is that think about your family, think about your friends, think about coworkers as well. These are all people who drive, and it's very, very important to remember. I'm sure everyone here are responsible drivers, but as I said earlier, it's important for us to drive defensively, not in paranoia and white-knuckling that steering wheel when you're going down 401. You know, you have to kind of, again, you know, as they say, as I've told people who have said to me, Rick, I just hate driving in Toronto. I said, well, you know what, you have to kind of drive like a Torontonian drives, you know, but wipe out the stunt driving and so on. But that way you can at least drive more safely and so on. So again, what we want to do as a government is to hold the ones responsible and who are selfish enough to put others in danger accountable for their actions, because if not, the life that they may take could be yours. However, defensive driving, the life you save.
Thank you. May be yours. Thank you. The member for Barrie Innisfil has a question.
Oh, thank you. And I'm going to actually follow suit with the member opposite. I know the member from Chatham-Kent had a lot more to say in his remarks, so I wanted to see if he could elaborate, and just so that we are not, waiting with bated breath for the end of his speech. So thank you.
To the member from Chatham-Kent Leamington.
Well, I'd like to thank the member from Barrie Innisfil, for the question, and again for the opportunity for me to expand a little bit further. You know, I think one of the things that make speeches more interesting in our legislatures when we tie in those personal examples, especially the ones that we've experienced or know of, and that takes a bill that's being debated and makes it come alive. And I think that each and every one of us, I think should be grateful. Okay, should be grateful, for changes that are being placed in the bill, because look, all we want to do is make driving through the Highway Traffic Act, we want to make it safer for everyone concerned. And of course, we want to protect even those vulnerable citizens of Ontario.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. The member for Toronto Centre has a question.
Thank you so much, Speaker. And to the member across, as some of my colleagues may know, I'm a bit of a motorsports enthusiast. I've been competing in regional autocross events for almost a decade now, and I even have a few trophies to show for for my time in the sport. But despite my need for speed, one of the things that I've learned about the motorsports community is the dedication to safety that they have, and to providing a safe outlet for high speeds that takes that speed off of our public roads, and it's a really important role that they play. However, I have heard from folks in the motorsports community over the last year that they have been overly restricted in being able to put on COVID-safe events and open their outdoor recreation facilities because they fall under the same restrictions that golf courses currently do. So my question to the member opposite, if he's really interested in getting speed off of our roads and into safe venues like our local motorsports plexes, why did he vote against the motion to reopen outdoor amenities safely as recommended in support of
Thank you. We'll turn back to the member from Chatham-Kent Leamington to respond.
Well, it's interesting that she would raise that question, but thank you for the question. I appreciate it. You always learn more about individuals in here when they talk about some of their personal interests. I think that's really exciting to know that, I remember seeing a video one time when we talk about dangers of, well, you see like in a closed track, and maybe it's a Formula One, and this one vehicle just literally exploded, and it just disintegrated, and yet the driver walked out of there because of the safety precautions. You probably know the one, yeah, and whatnot. So, you know, again, we want to keep Ontario safe, you know, and we need to cut down on speed. And so to answer your question a little more directly, we don't want to speed things up. We want to ensure that Ontario is safe, and then we will open things up. But thank you for the question.
Thank you. The next question, the member from Orleans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the member's passion for road safety. And I know that he mentioned that he wants, and the government wants, to demonstrate that they aren't messing around with road safety. I think that's almost a direct quote. And so I'm wondering, if that's the case, is he not disappointed that road safety isn't mentioned once in the 2021 budget?
Back to the member from Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
Well, there was a lot of things that were mentioned in that particular budget, which I think that is important, and this is also important. So I thank the member from Ottawa, Orleans, you know, for the question. You know, it's safety should be first and foremost. You know, we call it you know, safety first. And you know, when you take a look at the budget, you know, there were a lot of safety measures that were put into our most recent budget. Did we spell everything out? The budget would have been voluminous had we been able to do that. But again, when we look at it, you know, from the bigger picture, there's a lot of great components inside that budget which will make Ontario safe, you know, not just today, but for the future as well. Well, again, we can advance economic activity and keep our Ontarians safe, especially with this pandemic that nobody ever planned for, but we had to deal with it. We were the...
Thank you very much. The member for Niagara West has a question.
Thank you very much. My thanks to the member for his presentation today, and I know that obviously this particular legislation deals with roads and road safety, but of course surrounding people getting to and from work, an important thing in this particular part of the world, and we know an area that our government has made great investments is transit. So I'm wondering if the member could speak a little bit about some of the transit investments that have been made, how this also helps road safety. We get a few more cars off the road, and of course are able to have a little bit more space for those who are on the road. Could you speak a little bit about that, and also about the importance of ensuring safety on the roads also for those who are perhaps driving to a GO train station, for example, and taking a train in from there?
Back to the member from Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
Well, I thank the member from Niagara West for his question. You know, when you're talking to a rural boy, you know, and we talk about, you know, the big city transit and things of that nature, sometimes it's tough for us to kind of make the connection. But I know that our government is making great strides, because one of the things that have been noted in past is the Gardner, you know, the Don Valley, elements for 427, some of the 400 series. They are nothing more than just a giant parking lot. And so we need to kind of keep traffic moving. How do we do that? And there are many different opportunities to do that as well. And I think the investments that we're making in terms of our rail service, whether it be GO Transit or whether it be subways, and this is futuristic. And as the government, we have to be futuristic in our thinking. So again, you know, we are making those investments, and because we do want to make Ontario a better place to live.
Thank you. The next question, the member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Speaker. And as the member opposite said, that we were debating the MOMS Act, or the Moving Ontarians More Safely Act, and he made a comment about the DADS Act as well. But what I would like to ask him is, especially with everything we've been hearing from the e-bike community, how do we call something the MOMS Act when it literally takes away active transportation that moms rely on to transport their kids and groceries, and possibly makes it that they are no longer using legal e-bikes? How do we call something the MOMS Act when it's taking away that active transportation from moms? Thank you.
The member from Chatham-Kent-Leamington for perhaps his final answer.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and you're probably quite right. It will probably be my final response to questions, but I want to thank the member from Oshawa, you know, for your question. I anticipated an e-bike question from you because most of your presentation was on e-bikes, and rightfully so, and I get that. You know, one of the things that the ministry is doing is it's distinguishing the style of e-bikes, and you talked about that. And there are different requirements for each e-bike. And of course, we are leaving it up to municipalities to be able to choose just which class of e-bikes to permit on their infrastructure and where and which will enhance safety and mobility. And again, you know, there's the cargo e-bikes, but your concern was more, not so much about that, as it was just the regular type of e-bikes as well. So again, the proposed changes to the e-bike definition are meant to ensure that e-bikes themselves are permitted today, will continue to be permitted as an e-bike or even under the cargo e-bike pilot which we are running. Thank you very much.
And thank you.